Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Jason Mackey's First 10, a short version podcast talking all things Pittsburgh sports. Today is Thursday, January 16th, and we're going to talk a lot of Penguins today. News of yesterday that Tristan Jarry was placed on waivers. Going to be a significant shakeup in goal for the Penguins. I want to discuss that, revisit a previous scenario, talk a little bit about Kyle Dubas, what lies ahead. The Penguins are kind of in a tailspin right now, be heading up to Buffalo a little bit later for their game against the Sabres tomorrow. Before we get into it all, though, I want to remind you that we're brought to you by Edgar Snyder & Associates. If you're injured in an accident, you're probably wondering what's next. For over 40 years, Edgar Snyder & Associates has helped injury victims answer that question, whether it's gathering evidence, collecting medical records, or dealing with insurance companies. Edgar Snyder & Associates has helped over 75,000 people handle what's next. Call 1-800-94-EDGAR or visit edgarsnyder.com for a free consultation. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. So a heck of a time for this to happen, huh? Well, the Steelers end their season, and the Penguins promptly give casual hockey fans, or maybe people that are just sort of turning the page over to the rink, give them something sizable to chew on. This Tristan Jarry storyline, the goaltender storyline, is a big one. Don't let it fool you. So yesterday, the Penguins placed Tristan Jarry on waivers. They'll find out at 2 o'clock if anybody claims him. Do we think anybody's going to claim Tristan Jarry? I don't, personally. I mean, maybe you could work out something. Maybe there's a trade where the Penguins could take back money, but the performance just hasn't been there. It hasn't been there early in games, hasn't been there late in games recently. Jarry has struggled quite a bit, and good on Kyle Dubas for doing this. And again, I'm not absolving Kyle Dubas because he's the one who extended Jarry. And I don't like the contract, and I don't like a lot of what Kyle Dubas has done. But Jarry got off to a terrible start. He went to the AHL for a quote-unquote conditioning stint. We all know it was just to sort of get his legs back under him, try to find his game, and he hasn't found it. And the Penguins gave him plenty of runway, more than enough time, and it's not there. It's not there, and the Penguins are reaching a very crucial stretch, which, by the way, for Yoel Blomqvist, who's coming up, this is a gigantic opportunity. The Penguins will be at Buffalo, in Washington, and then they head out west for a 5-game trip that way. 7 total games on the road, and just a massive situation for the 23-year-old. But okay, let's dig into this a little bit more. As far as Tristan Jarry, it's his worst season by far, right? It's not even close. If you can get something for him, great. Not totally sure that's going to happen. Again, like I said, the Penguins have been just abysmal in goaltending statistics. It's not, I talked about those yesterday, like 5-on-5, all situations, basically 30th. But it's not just Tristan Jarry's fault. It's not just Alex Nedeljkovic's fault. This is a mark against the entire team. Is it not? I mean, they have just not played well enough in front of those guys. That's something a lot of players, Marcus Pettersson, Sidney Crosby, chief among them, talked about yesterday, where they kind of feel like this is a total, how do you say it? Just it's representative of all of them, and they almost feel bad that this has happened. If you would, and the point I'm trying to make with that is if there's anything to sort of shake the Penguins out of their slumber or show that they need to figure something out here, doesn't it have to be this? This has to trigger something that they start playing better in front of these guys. Although I'll be honest, I'm probably like all of you watching and listening. I don't know if I have a bunch of faith that that's going to happen. I think the Penguins at this point are what they are, and that's probably not a playoff team they've lost. I think it's 7 of 8. They're in 13th in the Eastern Conference, 4 points out of a playoff spot. I'm happy to see Yoel Blomqvist get a bit of a run here, and maybe they go to Ned for some games. But I just don't see this as something that's really going to change the Penguins' fortunes and jump them back into the postseason because of what I was talking about before, the Penguins and their inability to defend. Matt Vensel cites these stats a lot. I enjoy this in his writing, but talking about high danger chances against, how much they allow off the rush, expected goals, that sort of thing. They're not good. They're not good. And lately they haven't been good on the penalty kill. They're not protecting leads, obviously. And I don't blame Dubas again for doing this. A weird side note, and Andrew Destin wrote about this today. Exactly 2 years ago yesterday, Ned was placed on waivers while a member of the Detroit Red Wings. And that's something he talked about in Andrew's story. But there's a link there. there's a link there with Ned. There's also been a link there with subpar goalie play with Ned and Jarry. It just, again, hasn't been good enough, again, from Andrew's story, too. Per Money Puck, Ned has allowed minus 7.2 goals above expected this season, which ranks 79th out of 90. Jarry was at 86th and minus 9.5 goals saved above expected. So anyway, that's a fancy way of saying that those guys have underperformed. When you look at expected goals, when you look at what they're supposed to do, they have done less than that. And that has been a significant part of the season. It's been a significant part, negative part of the Penguins season. All right, so another branch of this, of course, is Blomqvist and what happens with him. I've been intrigued by his game. I was intrigued by his game earlier this season. He's only 23. He's actually played pretty well in the minor leagues. Up here, the numbers are kind of skewed. 904 save percentage, 360 goals against average. He had some really bad games early on, and they were bad because the Penguins didn't do much in front of him. They improved a little bit later. I think the kid has the poise to come up here and do something. I want to see it. Most of all, I just don't want to see the Penguins continue to bang their head against the wall with Tristan Jarry anymore. I don't think it makes sense. Whatever happens. He can earn his way back up here, whatever, but I'm not married to continuing to do the same thing over and over again. I have more stuff I want to get to, both with this and maybe a little bit of Steelers talk. Wanted to talk about some young guys on their offense as we sort of concentrate efforts on who will be back next year. But first, a message from the Bradenton Area Convention and Visitors Bureau, our usual middle role thing. Ready for an escape from the everyday? The Bradenton area on Florida's west coast is welcoming visitors. Our world-famous beaches are being restored to their pristine states. Beloved island businesses are bouncing back faster than expected. Our signature Floridian cuisine is just as fresh as ever. Don't wait. Start planning your visit today at BradentonGolfIslands.com. Actually, I should just pause instead of that 30-second read. Just tell you to go look outside. If you want to go to Bradenton, if you want somewhere that's happy, just look outside. There's no snow on the ground. There's no plows. There's no wind. There's no wind chill. It's just nice. Anyway, all right. So something with the Jarry situation, the goaltender situation, I wanted to tackle. I was seeing this bandied about on social media, and it drove me crazy because I was on the beat for this sort of thing. But whether Jim Rutherford made a mistake trading Marc-Andre, allowing Marc-Andre Fleury to be in the expansion draft and basically committing to Matt Murray. I'm sorry, that's revisionist history here. Because Marc-Andre Fleury will still be on an NHL roster and contributing. Tristan Jarry probably won't. Matt Murray's dealt with a whole bunch of injuries. We can look back and discuss that move, discuss what Jim did. I'm not second-guessing it. It was the right move at the time. Matt had won back-to-back cups. He was a much cheaper option. I hate it. I hate that it exists. Part of me still looks at the Vegas Golden Knights and gets mad because it took Fleury away from Pittsburgh. Fleury should have retired here. But if you're Rutherford, you have to make a move. You have to make that choice. And that was a hard choice for him to make for understandable reasons. But I don't have any problem committing to Matt Murray. It's incredibly unfortunate that he hasn't been able to stay healthy. It's incredibly unfortunate that Tristan Jarry hasn't been able to find it. Let's also not forget that this is a big story. This is a big deal because Tristan Jarry has played well. He's been an all-star in 2020 and 2022. People are upset because there's more there. Maybe another team finds it. I don't know, but I don't see it coming out in Pittsburgh. And I experienced that a lot on the Pirates beat, where you expect a guy to figure it out, and it's just not going to happen here, and you have to trade him. And sometimes you get burned by that. And maybe the Penguins get burned by this. But I don't blame Kyle Dubas for not continuing to do the same thing over and over again. That said, this is, again, a mark against Kyle Dubas. There's no other way to slice it. He extended Tristan Jarry to a contract that was basically an albatross. Ryan Graves, same deal. I tweeted something to this effect yesterday. They've wasted over 10% of their cap space on those two players. You're talking about a goaltender you've put on waivers and a defenseman that you can't stop healthy scratching. And I don't really have an issue with it because Graves hasn't been effective enough. It's been mismanagement. I would argue that Erik Karlsson hasn't been worth the money, and I have argued that. If you look at what Kyle Dubas has done, he's done some good things, but a lot of what he had, it was a little bit of a mess. It was maybe better than expected. I'm not sure. Either way, it's been sort of poor roster management in general since Rutherford left. But what move has he made that's really made a positive difference for the Penguins? I mean, I'm not buying Philip Tomasino here. I mean, it's fine. It was a nice, shrewd ad, didn't pay a lot, whatever, and he's been a positive contributor. But, that's not going to balance out over $10 million in salary. And so this is a pretty big hole for Dubas. This is a pretty big admission of failure. And I will give him points for talking to the media yesterday and saying it's fair to pin it on him, but it's accurate. It's not good. And if the Penguins miss the playoffs 3 straight years, man, it's a pretty big backslide. And it's kind of crazy to think, oh, we're going to come back from this without really blowing it up. Anyway, I could talk about this stuff a long time, but the point is that Jim Rutherford didn't make a mistake. It was the right move, and the performance hasn't worked out with Tristan Jarry for any number of reasons, but this is the right move to go to Joel Blomqvist. I want to see what he can do. I have a feeling he could establish himself as the goaltender of the future when you look at how the delineation of duties between him and Ned is going to work. I certainly hope that it's more Blomqvist and just give him an opportunity to play. Ned's been a good backup, but he hasn't been what he was last year. Goals against average has gone from 297 to 340. There's nothing I'd be overly adherent to. He hasn't been a whole lot better than Jarry. He has been better than Jarry, but not enough to the point where I don't just want to see the young kid play and see what happens. Otherwise, what are you clinging to? Hasn't been a bunch going on. Not going to get to that Steelers topic, but Evgeny Malkin, by the way, Andrew wrote about this, and I found it interesting. He's been out, upper body injury, came back last game. Curious to see how Gino finishes over the final 36. There's a lot more there. We know that. It's I use the analogy of a dial a lot. If you want to turn a dial up, you can do that quite a bit with some strong play from Evgeny Malkin and sort of balancing out their lineup. So I'll be curious to see, especially after Gino talked. Usually when he talks and delivers a message the way he did about not wanting to miss the playoffs and they need to get their heads out of their there's typically something that follows. And as Andrew wrote, Gino started the season with 16 points in the first 14 games since. He only has 16 points over his last 28 games. Goal scoring has been not great for him, but you get Michael Bunting going on his line, maybe another scoring element, whether it's Tomasino, somebody else. I mean, he has recognized his ability more as a distributor. Not going to be the trigger guy on that line, but if you get a trigger guy on that line, I think Gino still knows enough and has enough there as more of a facilitator. The Penguins just need more offensive balance, especially in the top 6. It can't be just Crosby's line. So I wanted to make a little bit more of that, but I'll be curious to see how Gino rebounds from those comments and finally having him back in the lineup. I think that's going to be a big key in Buffalo and on the West Coast trip. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. You can get all of these videos and so much more on our Post-Gazette North Shore Drive podcast and YouTube network. We'll be back here tomorrow with another episode of First 10. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.